Today, we are honored to have three hosts with us on the expert of this topic. Nia, Vice President of Enrollment from Hamline University, Johnny Johnson, Vice President of Enrollment at Transylvania University, and Elena D. Hicks, Dean of Admissions, Executive Director of Enrollment, Southern Methodist University. On behalf of the Navigate 2020 event sponsor, GoToCollegeFairs, I'd like to extend a warm welcome and thank you all for being a part of this panelist. And I believe that's all I have, so why don't we just begin now?
Hi, welcome everyone to our session, What Matters Most to Colleges. We're thrilled to be able to bring this content to you today in conjunction with GoToCollegeFair, and we're excited. We've got lots of great information for you. We'll go ahead and get started. So to begin with, I'm up first. My name is Nia Zhang Chan. I'm the Vice President of Enrollment at Hamline University, which is located in beautiful St. Paul, Minnesota.
Thank you, Nia. My name is Elena Hicks, and I'm the Dean of Admission at Southern Methodist University in Dallas, Texas. And it's a medium-sized school that's just south of downtown Dallas.
And good afternoon, everyone. My name is Johnny Johnson. I am Interim VP for Enrollment and Director of Admissions at Transylvania University in Lexington, Kentucky. We're a small private liberal arts institution in the downtown Lexington area.
All right, and first up to share today, as we break down the list of what matters most to colleges, is our colleague, Elena.
Thank you, Nia. It's good to be with you all today. One of the things that I wanted to talk to you about is being authentic in this process. It is the basis for all that we do here in a college admission, getting to know you and your authentic self. So I'll talk in a big picture kind of way, and then also maybe give some examples of what we do here at SMU. So back to authenticity. We want you to do some homework before you start engaging with us. And it's not heavy lifting homework. It's about knowing about yourself, what you like, what you don't like. Say, for instance, are you used to being at a smaller school and maybe that's what you want to do on the university side? Or have you been at a smaller school for high school, but you want to go off to someplace large as far as your university experience? Do you want to be in a rural area? Do you love metropolitan areas or suburban areas? Doing that research and really getting to know yourself helps us to help you make the right match. As well, you do not have to know what your major is. A lot of students come to the table wondering, okay, I have to tell them a major, I'll just write this down. The bulk of universities will have a pre-major or an undecided type of status, but what would help us to know is, hey, I'm really good at English and that's something that I might want to engage in, or I've always dreamed of being an engineer. I may not have the background of that yet, but it's something I want to explore. To that end, we can help you go in the right direction as well. So the basis of what we do as university is about you knowing yourself and being able to connect with us and let us know who that authentic person is and how we can help. So let's segue a little bit into courses. And there are lots of questions about what should I take, how many should I take, and we'll talk a little bit about that. So one of the questions I get a lot is, what about taking the most challenging coursework? What is the most challenging? And let me put it into perspective for you. Yes, we would love to see a student who, if honors is available at their school, that they take honors or AP or IB or whatever it is. We love that for you. But there's a caveat. You need to work with your school counselor, your college counseling office, and your academic advisor on the classes that are good for you. So if you go into those honors classes and maybe you aren't ready for 6 or 7 honors classes that you're taking in 1 year, that is probably not a good balance to have. So your school will help you figure out what is the balance on the classes that I will take that are more challenging. Another question that I hear a lot from students is, okay, if I'm making a B in say AP course or an IB or or in my honors courses, if I'm making a B, is that equivalent to an A if a student, wasn't taking those? We look at your high school profile, what your school offers. So it's not a competition between you and the student at the next school. It's not a competition between you and the person next to you in your class. It's about what your school offers, what you've chosen to take, and how well you've done that. So there's no need to feel like there's additional pressure to take courses that you just aren't ready for. The other thing I would say on course selection is the question about how many do I take? Well, that goes back to you kind of having a feel of your interest area. Say, for instance, if you're thinking something in the sciences or in engineering, then you want to take as many science, math classes that you can. You wouldn't want to stop at just 2 or 3. All of us will have recommendations on how many units the average student will come into our institution. I know typically for my institution, students on the average have about 19 units of courses that they bring in from their high school, but that changes amongst us all. So you definitely want to ask the school that you're interested in about that. Cumulative grade point average. This is another aspect of college admissions that can change from university to university. Where I work here at SMU, we look at a freshman GPA, sophomore GPA, junior GPA, senior GPA, and then we have your cumulative. So we look from year to year to see if a student has been consistent. And I will tell you, sometimes maybe in sophomore or junior year, I'll see that a student, I'll give you an example, has a 3.0, 3.0, all of a sudden they have a 2.8 and then another 3.0, just as an example. What I'll do is to dig into, my team will dig into, oh, what happened with that 2.8? And referencing the last question that we talked about, or the last topic, sometimes it's a student decided to take a few more honors courses, or the student started taking AP courses. And so that's not going to count against that student. We know that they're still in range. And as far as the cumulative GPA as well, some of us unweight that GPA. So sometimes your schools will weight a GPA, giving you more weight for either courses or if they're advanced. Many of us will take your GPA, bring it to a 4.0 scale so that everybody's on an even playing field. The question I always get after I say that is, what about my AP or my IB or my honors courses? Are you just going to bring that down to a 4.0 and I'm not going to get credit? Yes, you will get credit for the advanced courses. We factor that in as well. Do all schools recalculate a GPA, all universities? No, but that is a great question for you to ask the schools that you are interested in. But no matter what, we're going to give you the credit for what you have. One last thing about cumulative grade point average. We know right now that we're in a very interesting time where you might be, say this semester, you're getting a pass fail or something equivalent. Do not worry. We are all in the same boat. We are with you. Whatever your school provides this semester, or even next semester, if they have to, we will take that into account and make sure that you are treated fairly and you will not be penalized in any way for doing a pass-fail for this semester. So be authentic. When you think about rigorous coursework, think about rigorous coursework in regard to you and who you are and what you might have an interest in college, and then know cumulative GPA-wise that we all kind of look at it in a different way, but in the end, we're going to be fair to you. So with that, know that we'll take questions later on, and I'm going to hand it off to Johnny.
Well, good afternoon, everyone, again. And I want to kind of go over a couple of other things that we look at as admissions reps when you start doing your application and showing your interest and things like that. And the first one, the demonstrated interest, will look differently now because of our situation that we're in. And so for the first part, admissions reps, admissions officers can tell, if you visited campuses or if you're opening emails or if you're responding to certain things. And that's what this demonstrated interest is. How are you showing the admissions office or your admissions representative that you are interested in their institution? Now, because of the times that we're in, we know that visiting campuses is not one of the things you can do right now. And so, of course, we make adjustments to that. So, are you answering the phone call when we call you? Are you responding to the text messages? Are you returning our voicemails? Are you reading the emails and responding? We know you can't get on campuses right now, but are you doing the other things that show us that you are interested in the institution? That's not going to have a bearing on you whether you're admitted or not, but it is going to show the admissions office how interested you are in that institution. We are looking for students that are interested in us, just like you want schools to be interested in you. And so this is kind of a back and forth that way. And those are some of the ways you can show that you're interested. When we have off-campus events in your community, and hopefully we get back to doing that in the next months or so, especially in the fall, when the recruitment season jumps up again, are you coming to those events? When you RSVP for an event, are you showing up? Or if you don't show up, are you calling us to let us know that something came up and you're going to reschedule? Again, the response to either an email or a text or a phone call is important, because remember, these are humans behind all of those particular tools. Those are humans behind those phone calls. Those are humans that send those emails. Those are not robots. And so we want that interaction. We want to respond to you. We want to be engaged with you as you go through this admissions process. And so that back and forth, whether you're looking at a larger institution or a smaller institution, the admissions reps want to get to know who you are. That also can help the admissions rep be in your corner when it comes to an admissions decision or scholarship. If you have continued to show the interest in that institution and responded back and forth with whatever media you can, that shows that the admissions counselor that you're interested, and then they will go to bat for you when it comes to looking at scholarships or looking at admissions into a certain college or to a certain program or things like that. So keep that demonstrative interest in the back of your mind, because that will play to your advantage. For extracurricular activities and athletics, the key to this is, hopefully, and you all know this, your academics are your number one priority. And we want to make sure that you are taking care of the things you need to do in the classroom, with your presentations, with your homework, with your classwork and discussion groups and things like that. But the extracurricular activities and athletics show us that you can do all those academic things and balance this outside the classroom life. How are you able to be in class for 6-7 hours a day and then also do 3 or 4 different activities each night or on the weekends or things like that? Because when you get to college, you're not in class all day. You're in class for a couple hours a day. And how do you balance the rest of your time plus keep your grades up? And so we want to see, how are you balancing your days and your weeks while managing the rigors of your academic work. It's important for us to see that. We don't want to see that you're involved in 18 different activities and your grades are slipping. I'd rather see you be involved in 4 or 5 activities, keeping your grades up and holding some kind of positions or being a really active member in whatever group or athletic or thing that you're a part of. And that bodes well for community service, or if you're working, if you're doing things with your church. All of those things play a part into the complete student. And so again, when you get to college, you're not just in class, you're doing all of these other things. And we want to see that our students can balance themselves between the academics and their outside activities. The third thing is leadership. And that jumps back to some of the extracurricular and athletics. When you're involved in all these different things, how are you being a leader in those groups? Again, we don't want you to be involved in 18 different things across the board and just put your name on the roster that you're involved. We want you to show some leadership. Are you the vice president? Are you the secretary? Are you the sergeant at arms? Did you start a committee on something? And maybe you're not the person that is in front of the line all the time. Leadership doesn't just mean holding the position. Leadership could mean how you take charge of your individual situation. You know, maybe there are enough things going on where you can't be involved in groups on campus, but you're a leader in your home because you've got to, you know, take care of your younger siblings, or you're a leader at your church because you're leading the Sunday school class. Or you're a leader in the community because you decided to do the lawn service for that community, and you organize your friends to cut lawns for some elderly people on your block or something like that. Leadership doesn't necessarily mean just I have to have a position in a group. It means how you've taken control of a situation. So as you look at those kind of 3 items that we've discussed, remember, your demonstrated interest shows the admissions representatives how you are interested in the institution based on how you respond, how you interact, and how you are having communications with those institutions. Your extracurricular activities and your athletics, what is the depth of those, and how you spread yourself through different kinds of activities, but keeping your grades and your academics in the forefront. And then leadership, how are you taking control of whatever situation you're a part of? And so hopefully that helps you as you start to list those things when you apply. Your resume is important. We want to know who you are and what you're doing. And hopefully that gives you a couple of tips on how to list those things on your resume when you apply for admissions. To continue this list, let's turn it over to Mania, and she will continue giving you some great points.
Hi, everyone. Again, my name is Mania Zhang Chan, and I represent Hamline University in St. Paul, Minnesota. A little bit about Hamline is that similarly to Transylvania, we are also a smaller private liberal arts college. We have about 3,300 students overall, and as a university, we offer undergraduate as well as graduate courses. And so I know a little bit about breaking down the list. Along with the comments that my colleagues made, I'll be covering recommendations such as recommendation letters and referrals, your class rank, how important really is that to colleges, as well as test scores. And so from AP test scores to the standardized test score, whether that's the ACT, SAT, or for international students, the TOEFL or the IELTS test. So for recommendations, know that not all colleges request that you must submit recommendations in order to complete your application. When you apply to colleges, whether you're using the college's individual application or you're actually using the Common App where you can add several schools at one swipe, each school will let you know if recommendations are required. So there is a difference between not having to submit them and then absolutely having to submit them. That being said, I don't know of very many colleges where even when they say you don't have to submit recommendations, you still can, and they'll still look at them. Recommendations really can help out admission offices and strengthen your application. Your application in and of itself is really one-dimensional. When you're submitting a test score or a GPA, it's pretty one-dimensional. Recommendation letters can really add that extra oomph that demonstrates who you are as a whole person. Recommendation letters traditionally come from either your school counselor, a teacher at your institution, or it could even come from other people within your community, particularly if you're involved in a lot of civic activities. And so through your church, through your athletics coach, from your mentor, if you belong to a college readiness group, your college readiness coach can write the recommendation letter for you as well. What it really does is it speaks to you as a whole person and can bring out those other facets of good work that you're doing that sometimes don't show up in the GPA or may not seem right for a resume. If you feel like your resume is getting a little bit long already, traditionally resumes should only be about page long, right? Even when applying for jobs, a recommendation letter can do wonders. And those are typically only 1 to maybe 2 pages long. Some schools will automatically have the school counselor at the school work very closely with you to create a recommendation letter. Not all students are that fortunate within their high school system. And if that's the case, make sure you know that you don't have to use your school counselor, especially if you might feel like your school counselor hasn't had a lot of time with you. You certainly can use others in your organization or within your network. That being said, each year at Hamline, we do see recommendations letter, not too many, but some come through that are written by mom and dad or grandma and grandpa. We will absolutely read those. We think they're wonderful. They generally will not sway our opinion fully for admissions decisions. So make sure you get one from someone who can somewhat be considered an impartial third party. Class rank. So class rank is typically the way that your high school will rank you within your grade. So as seniors, it will take all the seniors in your class, and based on either your weighted or unweighted GPA, depending on how your high school operates, will rank you from order of 1 to however many students are in the class. Schools who still rely or do class rank typically still also maybe will use the valedictorian or salutatorian structure as well. And so you probably already know for yourself if your high school is one that ranks. Colleges typically will look at class rank if it's provided. That being said, each of them will weigh it differently. So for some transcripts from high schools, class rank is automatically on the transcript. I know here in Minnesota, many of our public high schools no longer do class rank, and so it does not show up on the transcript. If the college is asking you for class rank and your school does not rank, make sure you check with your school counselor and also contact that college individually to let them know what your situation is. That being said, not all high schools are created equal, and there are just going to be some classes within high school structures that are super competitive. In some ways, class rank can certainly help you, and in some ways, you may be very concerned that your class rank will actually work against you. At Hamline University, I can certainly speak for our institution. We do look at class rank if it is provided. If it is not provided, then we don't use it. And so make sure that you check in with the colleges that you're applying to see if class rank is required, a nice to have, or is not required at all. And then you can take the necessary steps from there to see if you are going to be reporting a class rank or not. Test scores, that's a big one. And that's actually a big anxiety inducing one as well. So for test scores, you take tests all the time, it seems like, in high school. You take a semester's worth of AP classes and then you take the AP test. You're an international baccalaureate school, then you have to take the IB exam. You are looking at a college that does require a standardized test score, such as the ACT or SAT. For AP and IB, SAT and ACT, as Elena mentioned earlier in our presentation, that has been greatly affected by COVID-19. And so many of you watching today who are juniors who wanted to take it earlier this spring have not been able to, or if you're sophomores were planning to take it this summer as you're a rising junior and you may not be able to as well, or the format may have changed and you have to become acclimated to that new format. Know that even before COVID-19, there were hundreds upon hundreds of colleges in the United States that do not require the ACT or SAT to be considered for admission. Since COVID-19 has hit, many additional colleges have also gone SAT, ACT optional, or what we like to call test optional, as well as they have just extended for the next year or maybe the next 3 years, not requiring the test. And so more schools than ever have become test optional for the standardized entrance exams, such as ACT and SAT. For our international students in the audience, that also can affect international admission too. And so for the schools that traditionally have requested a TOEFL, an SAT, ACT, or IELTS, all of those modalities have changed as well. And so it's going to be very important to check in with the institution that you're interested in to see which exam they are taking, if they take one at all, or for international students, if you can demonstrate your English language proficiency in a different way, such as using an alternative method like Duolingo or interviews. With tests for AP and IB, colleges each will set their own parameters for the minimum score cutoff for those two exams. Given that the modality for those two exams has changed considerably during COVID-19, again, it's going to be important to check in with the institutions, the colleges that you are interested in. Otherwise, for the most part, colleges do publish on their website the minimum acceptable score for AP or IB exams to receive college credit. So keep that in mind as well, is that even if the testing modality has changed, the scoring structure may not have, and that some colleges are going to be more open at this time to accepting different types of tests, or maybe have done away with tests completely. If you've always been somebody who has struggled with test anxiety, know that for many colleges, the test will not define you. For other colleges that absolutely do require it, you're going to want to make sure you reach out to those colleges, but plan to take that entrance exam, whether it's the ACT or SAT, in a timely manner. Most colleges are going to be very flexible with some of the testing difficulties that students are having now. But if a test score is required, make sure that you're checking in with your school counselor as well as with, if you're working with an independent counselor in the colleges that you're applying to get a better idea of when you will take that test, how you will receive that score, and how you will submit it to the colleges. We have some key takeaways for our presentation. We know we've covered a lot of ground. We're happy to know that this presentation is being recorded so students can view it again later at their own pace. Some of our key takeaways we have listed here. I'll have Elena kick us off with the first two.
Yeah, so I started off my slide talking about being authentic. And so know who you are to best position yourself. I gave you some recommendations earlier, but here are a few more. There are things that you can do to soul search. That's what we talked about. But here are some things you can do outside of that. Sometimes there are things about you that you just haven't connected with yet, or you don't give yourself credit for. So I would say this, and this means you have to be a little bit vulnerable, but ask a parent, guardian, friend, what do you see are my strong points? What do you see in me that, that makes me unique? And so many times there are friends, family, people that know you, teachers, school counselors can say, well, you are really, really good in this. To you, it might seem, oh, that's just me, that's every day. But to another person, it's something of value. So you knowing yourself and knowing yourself as well as you can during this process really helps. And know that colleges will put a different value in each category of what we're doing. I think we've all mentioned that you should definitely go back to the different schools that you're interested in and asking them, how do you feel about the essay? How do you calculate GPA? We all can be different in that. The baseline is about the same of how we believe that it's important information, but the rank of importance for us may change from school to school. Johnny?
Yeah, so a couple of things I want to hit on. One was don't underestimate the insights of your high school counselor. These individuals are there for you. And I understand that in some institutions or in some schools, there's not as many high school guidance counselors that can get around to all of the students. But if you have an opportunity, just spend 15, 20, 30 minutes with your high school guidance counselors. They have knowledge that is for you to help you get to the next level, whether it's going to a 2-year or 4-year or military jobs after high school. They have a ton of knowledge, so don't underestimate that. The other part is they have connections with people at the colleges you're looking at. And so their recommendation or their connection with someone at an institution could be your help or your door into said institution that you're looking at. So use those high school guidance counselors when you have a chance. Schedule an appointment with them, have your parents meet them, because not only do they have insight on the college search process, but when our test scores do come back, if they do come back, they'll have insight on when to sign up for those tests, what those testing systems are like, how to best prepare for those things, how to get recommendations the best way, how to schedule campus tours. So your high school guidance counselors, your school professional counselors are very, very important to this process. The other part that's really, really important is that students, this is your search, okay? Make sure that all of the things that, remember when Alina talked about being authentic and knowing yourself, this is your college search. So I know mom and dad and uncle and aunt and grandma want to help you with this process, but at the end of the day, it's your search. And so make sure that you are looking for things that are authentic to you as the individual. You will be the one that'll be spending time on that'll be at this college for the next 4 years, not mom and dad, or not uncle, not grandma. So make sure you are taking all of the research, make sure you are doing all of the kind of the looking up and the Googling of different schools, because it's your responsibility. It's your responsibility to know the deadlines. It's your responsibility to write the essay. It's your responsibility to find the people who do a recommendation for you. That is your responsibility. The other part I just want to throw in there, and if we have any parents listening, make sure, student, you are filling out the application. Mom and dad should not be filling this out. This is your form, okay? Mom and dad can urge you and make you do it or sit on you until you do it, but make sure, student, that you are filling out all of the forms. It's your information that we want. It's your birth date, it's your grades, it's your recommendation, it's your stuff that we want, not the adults that are helping you through the process. Mania?
Thank you, Johnny. So we know that we have a good crowd of students and parents and other college stakeholders who are watching our presentation today. So our next key point may seem a bit of an oxymoron, and that is college isn't for everyone, but there is a college out there for everyone. And the reason why the three of us felt like that was important is because there are students out there, high achieving, middle income, low income, high income, from all spectrums of life, who will think to themselves, you know, I really don't want to go to college. And that is a respectable decision. And that goes against the grain of the business side of college, for which Alina, Johnny, and I represent. But what we really want to represent is that students have the autonomy and the decision-making authority to choose if they decide to go to college at all. And they may decide that they would rather do a trade school, they would like to do an apprenticeship, they would like to take a couple of years off and work or do volunteer work or travel the world, and that's fantastic. And that could be your trajectory. That being said, if you're out there and you think college is not for me because I'm not smart enough, I'm not talented enough, I don't have enough money, that is absolutely an incorrect assumption. There is a college out there for everyone, whether it is a community college, whether your goal is to go to graduate school, to get advanced education, to get a bachelor's degree, to get an associate's degree. There's a college out there that already has that really niche area of study that you are really interested in, that you can find. You can suss it out on Google. You can visit our web pages and you'll find that, wow, I've always wanted to be a forensic psychologist, and now I found a school that offers that as a major. And so know that while college isn't for everyone, if you choose not to go, we want you to feel empowered in that decision, that you're making the right choice for yourself at that place in your life. But if you are thinking about college, there's definitely one out there that meets your needs and can pique your interest. Lastly, it will work out. We are going through what we have been calling unprecedented times with this pandemic. And for many of you, optimism is now a superpower. And so know that you hold on to your hope and your optimism. People like Johnny, Alina, myself, we are all working, whether it's from home or in the office, here to support you in your college search. And so while times have changed considerably, we're working hard behind the scenes to make sure that we're building the future for you folks, and know that if it gets stressful, if you can't reach your school counselor, if it's time to take a test and you're nervous about it, it will work out. Take a deep breath and know that there are good people out there who really want to work with you on it. And that moves us into our Q&A. I know that we've got lots of good questions out there. We tried to select some of the top questions that we thought folks might have for enrollment managers like ourselves. And so why don't we have Alina take the first couple questions?
All right, so what does it mean when a college is selective? I know for SMU, we consider ourselves a private selective university. And lots of times, you all, that is based on the number of students that one admits and how many of those students come. So you can get into super selective schools like the Ivies, where they have thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of applications, and maybe they only admit, 15%, 10% of the students that make application to their university. Lots of times people believe that, and the Ivies are very important, and they are very strong, but it's not the norm for the bulk of the universities to only admit 8%, 10%. Typically schools are admitting in a range of sometimes to 45 to 50%. And then there are other schools that will admit 95, 98%. It just depends on the university that you are interested in and where they are on that strata. So sometimes for small private schools or for private schools, there is a threshold of so many students that they can take, or it's about where they rank. So, and sometimes you look at some of the larger flagship institutions, they can take more students. But you would have to do your research on that and look at selectivity. But I will also tell you, Don't let selectivity outweigh what your interests are and what you're passionate about and schools that would be a good fit for you. And if I might add, many times school counselors, as Johnny mentioned earlier, have contacts and they know schools, and they may throw schools out to you that you've never heard of. And you might think, I've never heard of it, I'm not going to be interested in it. But take the time to look at those schools that your school counselors recommend to you. As far as having to file a FAFSA to be considered for admission, there are two different processes for most of us when it comes to admission and financial aid, and sometimes grants and scholarships. And so, no, does a student who applies to my institution have to file the FAFSA if that's not something they want to do, if there's not an interest in institutional financial aid? No, they do not have to fill out the FAFSA. For students who are interested in aid and some grants and things like that, they will work independently with our financial aid office to fill out the federal application form for student aid, and sometimes yet another type of document that we have, which is called the CSS profile, that gives us additional information. So when it comes to admission, there are two different routes. There are two different pathways for admission and financial aid. Admission handles you getting into the institution, and sometimes admission does have merit-based scholarships. Not all of us, but some of us do have merit-based aid from the admission office. Merit-based aid has nothing to do with your finances. And then if it's about finances, it goes to the financial aid office, where there's either one or two forms that you'll fill out, and they'll give you information about it.
So I'll jump in on the next one. And the question is, does how much my family earns in income affect my admission? And I would say the majority of us institutions, I would say 98, 99% of us are need blind admissions, okay? And that means that we do not look at your financial situation to say if you're an admitted student or not, okay? We're basing our admission on the things that we talked about earlier. So your grades, the type of classes you're taking, if you decide to submit test scores, your involvement in your school or in your community, your leadership, those kind of things are more what rest on admissions versus how much your family earns. Again, when Alina talked about the financial aid and scholarship process, that's when you get more into the financial part of admissions. But when you're just talking about how do I get into an institution, how am I accepted into an institution, it's more on your merit is what we like to call it. The things that you are bringing to the table without the financial part being involved. It's a great question to ask the institutions that you are looking at. Also, as Alina mentioned, we all do things differently. And so there are over 4,000 colleges in the country. I wish we did things a lot similar, but we can't, right? Because we're all different regions and different parts of the country. And so again, this becomes a part of that student owning your process. And this is your responsibility. You ask those institutions, what are the requirements for admission, and they will gladly tell you, here are the steps, or here are the requirements, or here are the criteria for admission, okay? Mania, since you already talked about test optional, do you want to do the interview one? Yes,
I can. Thank you, Johnny. So the question is, does every college require interviews for admission? The answer to that question is clear as mud, is maybe. Not all colleges require interviews. Among most of the highly selective colleges, so we're talking colleges that have less than like a 10 or 20% admission rate, many times they'll utilize alumni who live in the area to do the interview with you, and they'll pass those interview notes onto the admission office. At Hamline University, we are a selective institution. We have about a 60 to 65% selectivity rate. We do not require interviews for students. That being said, we do encourage them because, again, similar to your recommendation letter, it allows us to have a much more dimensional look and feel for who you are as a person, and to get a better understanding of why you're really interested in our institution. For students for whom we like to call on the bubble for admissibility, so there'll be students who will apply for admission, and there'll be some pieces of their application which are just not that strong, and it could just because they needed to spend a little more time on it, or they actually need to talk about that face-to-face. the interview is super important. So if you apply for admission to a college and they schedule you for an interview, if you're really interested in that college, if it's still in your top 10 list, your top 5 list, make sure that you reply back to that email and get yourself ready for the interview. Interviews are formal matters, and so they can sometimes meet at coffee shops or at the library. It certainly should always be at a public place in which people feel comfortable. It could be right there on campus if you're looking at an institution that's close enough for you to drive to. That being said, it's kind of like a job interview, and so you want to make sure that you are dressed up like a job interview, you have rehearsed some of your answers, you know yourself very well, that you have pinpointed those things on your application that you would like to either further explain or further highlight. And once you have that already and you're dressed up, you're ready for your interview. Interview notes do go back to your admission file. And so having a good show that day is really important. Do we sometimes get students who come in for an interview with their arms folded and mom and dad talk most of the time? Yes. Those are generally not what admissions counselors consider good interviews. Good interviews are students for whom the parents know that it's the student's responsibility. We can tell the student is taking it seriously because they came ready and dressed, well rehearsed, and they're showing authentic interest in the institution. And so while colleges, not all colleges require an interview for admission, know that some do. And if you are asked to interview for admission, you must be prepared for it. The last question was just about test optional, so I'll just pop in there again as a reiteration. Test optional means you can send in the score, but it is not required for admission. Many students will still choose to send in a score, and if you send it in, colleges that are test optional will still look at it. And so it's really your choice, and talk with your school counselor about it if you'd like to submit a score to schools that are test optional. Thank you.
Thank you so much to all our panelists. This is Alex again, your moderator for this session. I'm sure that everybody in the audience is giving a big round of applause to you all. Big virtual round of applause. You did an excellent job today. We are going to begin taking in some of your questions. So I'm going to go ahead, and I've accumulated a good amount of them for you that we can go ahead and just, you feel freely, anyone on the panelists who feel they know the answer, to jump in at any time. So I will go ahead and begin just by asking a few. Again, we have so many people in the chat that we won't be able to get to everybody's questions, but I've brought about the most commonly asked questions. So to begin, we have someone who had to ask, if some colleges are no longer required SAT and ACT scores, do they issue their own version of entrance exam score, or do they scrutinize more on other factors like extracurricular activities and GPA?
I can certainly jump in and answer some of that, as well as my colleagues. If schools are test optional, then yes, they have most likely reconstructed the way they evaluate students for admission, and even for merit aid, if it's an institution that does institutional scholarships for their college, they have likely restructured some of that so that if students do submit a score and the score is considered, that makes an impact. If students don't submit a score, they have another way that they're going to be evaluating that student, both for admission as well as for institutional or merit-based scholarships. Many colleges had used the standardized tests, so ACT or SAT, for placement into certain levels of curriculum. So like placement into English 1100 versus English 99, which might have a little bit more remedial support. Many colleges, if they're no longer doing the standardized test, will put in place their own placement exams that typically you'll take before you enter into the fall class. And so there could be some more testing in your future, but it no longer directly affects your admissibility to the institution.
Thank you. I will go ahead, unless one of the other panelists have anything to add to that. I can go ahead and on to the next question. Okay. Is there a preference a college wants to see between an AP, IB, or dual enrollment classes? Is there a preference between them?
I don't mind answering that one. For my institution, no, there's not a preference. Just like there's not a preference, many of us have different applications that you can apply with. We don't have a preference which application you choose. We don't have a preference between, at least my school doesn't, between IB or AP or dual enrollment. It's what works for you and what the recommendation has been from folks at your school about what they support. So as long as you're feeling good about what you've chosen and you're excelling in it, we are fine with your choice. Whatever you present us with, that's what we will work with. Any other panelists want to add to that?
Yeah, I just want to say the last part that you're excelling in it. We don't want you taking these classes and failing. So, you talk with your school professional counselors, your teachers, and determine if it's the right class for you. Because you might think that those classes look good on your transcripts, but if you're not doing well in them, then they don't look good. So the AP, the honors, the advanced placement, the IB, they look good if you're doing well. And well doesn't mean an A, but not doing well, D and F, do not look good at all. So we want you making sure that you're doing well in those classes.
Okay, thank you so much. Going on to our next question. This person writes in asking, as a junior with no current test scores and a gap in service/club/athletics for the spring due to COVID-19, what should I be doing to stand out?
One of the things, and again, hopefully, we're all praying and hoping that things get back to some normalcy in the fall where you will have an opportunity to jump back into some of those out of school activities. But if we don't, many schools require some kind of resume or essay, excuse me, I meant to say essay or writing sample. That's how you can stand out. The way that you distinguish yourselves from other individuals a lot of times is your personal story. And so your transcripts can give us one side of you, and that gives us who you are academically in your classes, how you're challenging yourself, what kind of classes you're taking. But then the essay allows you to open up a little bit and talk about your passions. And so your passion is very different than someone else's passion. And if you're not able to do the community service that someone else does, if you're not able to be a leader like someone else is, if you're not the athlete that someone else is, but you love something about whatever, talk about that in your writing sample or your essay. I always tell students, it's a window into who you are. We get to look inside of that, and then you get to talk about whatever you want us to know about. And that could be something with your family. It could be a great vacation. It could be something going on in community. It could be a leader that you idolize or whatever. Those give us a little bit more into who you are. And it also separates you from your peers.
Excellent. All right, if no other panelists have anything to add to that, I can go ahead and on to the next question. Is there a chance of getting selected into a certain college, even if your GPA is low, but you've taken a lot of AP courses and have an SAT score on the higher end?
I can certainly try that one. Yes, there are colleges that don't require any minimum GPA and certainly have never required entrance exams, standardized test scores. And so if you're looking at a community college, a two-year college, those generally do not require any core background. In fact, you will more than likely take your own placement exams at community colleges that have open admissions or open selectivity so that they know which courses to place you in. For many students, that's actually a great place to start. It can help pace yourself. It can help save on finances. Certainly, if you do feel like high school wasn't the best experience for you and is not a strong indicator of your talent or what you can do in the classroom, because let's say you just ended up at a high school that really wasn't the best fit. For most teenagers, that's not within their ability to control. Starting at a community college is a great way to rebuild and build on top of the skills and talents that you already have. And those schools will not require a minimum GPA. If you're applying to a four-year college that does require you turn in a cumulative transcript, maybe is test optional, maybe does require the test. Yes, sometimes it can balance one or the other. At Hamlin each year, we do see students who are below a 3.0, but have a very high test score. We are test optional at Hamlin University. And so while if the information is submitted, it's more information, so we will definitely take a look at it. It never hurts to turn in something that's high, right? So if you have a high test score, why not submit it? You took the test, you studied for it, you paid for it, you absolutely can submit it. It can help balance out a transcript that maybe has a little bit lower GPA. That being said, most schools, and I would say emphasize most schools that are test optional, pay pretty close attention to that cumulative transcript. And so looking from 9th grade through to junior year, and then also looking at the senior year once grades are available, we know both through research and just from our own institutional data that students who have a consistent and strong showing cumulatively in high school have the highest entrance and persistence in graduation rates. And so admission offices are going to be very focused generally on if you can go the distance as opposed to run the sprint, which is more the way I would characterize the test.
Excellent, thank you so much. And then I'll go ahead, and this may be our last question. What would colleges like to see us doing during distant learning to stay engaged with extracurricular activities and personal interest? Just a general question regarding, you know, these times, and I believe that'd be a good answer for everybody.
You know, I can start with that. I bet all of us have something to say about it. You know, I would say do what you can do. So we don't want to add any more pressure to everything that you have going on right now. So in this distance learning, if there are things that you can remain doing that you did before, great. Or maybe you found a virtual way to connect with people with a skill or something that you can do to brighten someone's day in a virtual kind of way. But we're not going to put any pressure on you to try to just come up with a whole new resume of things out of the blue. We will work with what you have given us. The other thing that I would say about it is back to the authenticity, is if it's something that matters to you and you've had a chance to continue that, that's going to mean a lot to us, and to let us know about it. Panelists, what would you say to that question?
Go ahead.
Oh, I would add that, you know, the future, you know, someone once said, like, the future is for those who are building it today. More than ever, I think in our nation's history, our young people really are going to be the group that changes the world. And we really believe in the power of young voices. And so, you know, you can continue to stay active even in this time of social distancing, which I think has been really difficult for everybody. You can work on things, as Elena said, virtually. You can keep your clubs and organizations going. You can keep meeting. And honestly, I think there's a lot of innovation out there that can help us work and deal with COVID-19 that are going to be ideas that the young people have, that they're going to bring to the table. And so we haven't figured out how to, you know, solve COVID-19 yet. The idea is out there. It just takes someone to talk about it. And the way that, and the idea is not just to, you know, find the vaccine for COVID-19, which will probably happen in a lab somewhere else. It's about how do we keep our families, keep ourselves, keep our friends, how do we keep ourselves motivated? And that in and of itself is a really important accomplishment. And so don't forget to highlight that. Even if you think what you're doing right now is no big deal, the fact that all your classes went online literally overnight, and that you had to learn online, and maybe that was never a way that you ever thought you were going to finish out your senior year or do your junior year in, and that you are thriving and surviving, that's amazing. And so we anticipate we will be reading essays this fall and next year that will be about surviving COVID-19 and the activities that people did, whether they were things like, you know, you started a little free library in your backyard, to you just started walking your neighbor's dog because dogs can't get COVID-19 as far as we know. The things you did to keep yourself busy, to keep your mind sharp, I think are all important things that we're going to be really interested in hearing about on your admission essays for the future class.
And all right. Okay, that concludes all of our time we have today. Thank you so much for attending this expert presentation on what matters most to colleges, test scores, GPAs, extracurriculars, recommendations, and more. Remember that you can come back to the event page at any time to watch this recording. Explore your college options in our virtual college fair. We have hundreds of interactive virtual booths where you can watch videos, download material, and even chat live with admission representatives. You'll also have that some booths are scheduled their own live stream video presentations, so make sure you visit that today or come back while the event is still live to enjoy those experiences. That was all the time we have today. Once again, I'm sure everyone's giving a virtual round of applause to all of our panelists. Thank you all so much for taking the time to answer those questions. And that is all the time we have today. So I hope that everyone has a wonderful day, stays safe and healthy. and can't wait for this to be over, right? Have a nice day, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.